Some of the disadvantages are as follows. What do we do with the fact that there are multiple absolutist positions? How do we determine which one's correct? Now, if someone is an absolutist, that's probably not a problem for them. I mean, they just, well, I'm right and everybody else is wrong, so that's not an issue for me. I just believe that. Another problem is that it leads to intolerance. So, we have no way to establish, if we're looking at this philosophically, whether the Muslims are right, or the Hindus are right, or the humanists are right, or the Christians are right. And if we adhere to one of those perspectives, we don't see that as a problem. But when we're looking at this philosophically, we have to question, well, if there's only one set of principles that determines what's right or wrong, which one of these is correct? And so the issue of intolerance, that word kind of has positive connotations. Tolerance, intolerance has negative connotations. And so we consider that a problem. If we look at this stuff philosophically, it seems like tolerance is a virtuous thing. But this isn't a problem for an absolutist. They just say, well, if there's only one set of principles that defines right and wrong, tolerance for other views that are incorrect isn't a good thing. So these are disadvantages when we're looking at it philosophically. So to give an example of how to use absolutism, it's probably pretty obvious. I like to use the topics of intellectual property and unlicensed file downloading and sharing, because it's something that's ubiquitous today, and it's a decision that we face, because it's right there all the time if we have access to the World Wide Web, and it's easy. It's an easy thing to do, and we have the choice whether to do it. It's easy. The information we get is useful. It can be music. It can entertain us, and it's just really tempting to do it. And even if we choose not to do it, it's a choice we make every day. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to break the law. I'm not going to take something without paying for it, and things like that. So let's look at the example from an absolutist perspective. An absolutist might make this argument: unlicensed file downloading is the same as stealing. Stealing is universally wrong. Therefore, unlicensed file downloading is wrong. And so we can look at counter arguments to this. One way to do it would be to come at it from another ethical orientation. That's a possible way, but within these theories, you can pretty much always find counter arguments within the theories themselves. So a counter argument against this from the absolutist perspective might be something like this: freedom of information, access to the goods of information, stuff that we consider intellectual property. Freedom of access to that stuff is a universal good. What corporations and individuals who try to restrict access to this stuff unless they get paid for it is fundamentally wrong. So unlicensed file downloading, unlicensed file sharing is working against that wrong. So unlicensed file downloading and unlicensed file sharing is morally right. So moving on to relativism. Relativism is a response to absolutism. It says that there is no objective right or wrong with respect to beliefs, norms, behaviors, etc., and that diversity is an indication of this. Like what we talked about with, there's differences between Muslims, Hindus, humanists, Christians, etc. And likewise, it says that we can't judge the rightness or wrongness of beliefs, values, norms, etc., except from within the context of the culture within which they occur. So, I determine what's right or wrong to a Hindu only from within the Hindu system of morality. But I can't make a positive or negative judgment otherwise. I can't say that, well, they do things like that in their belief system, and it's that's incorrect because I feel such and such, or I believe such and such. And again, relativism has its disadvantages and advantages. One advantage is that we don't have to figure out or establish objective principles of right or wrong, and that's a relief. You don't have to worry about that. So we kind of live and let live, and it's not a problem to identify who's got the right solution. And relativism also cultivates tolerance. It's fundamental to relativism. We have this kind of universal notion of tolerance. And so, as a segue into the disadvantages, there are quite a few disadvantages to relativism. The first one is that if everyone must practice tolerance, doesn't that make tolerance a universal principle? If that's the case, then that seems like an internal inconsistency in relativism, because it claims that there are no universal principles of right or wrong, but it says that tolerance is a universal good. I don't think that's a huge problem for relativism, because they could say, well, we don't really consider it a universal, it's just kind of a byproduct of relativism. It's just something that happens to be the result of taking a relativist perspective. But they could also say, okay, well, whatever, it's a universal, it's the one universal that we have. But as far as everything else, there are no universals. So I don't think that's a big problem. Another slightly stronger challenge is that there do seem to be very common views of right or wrong from culture to culture. So if diversity is an indication that there are no universal principles of right or wrong, wouldn't these commonalities be an indication that there are in fact universal right or wrong principles? I think that's a pretty strong challenge. The next challenge is kind of complicated, so bear with me with this, and I'll do my best to explain it. I know we're not philosophy students in here, but this is going to require some discussion of logic and argumentation, and like I said, I will cover that in the methods lecture coming up. This is a pretty strong problem with relativism. It commits the fallacy called affirming the consequent. That is discussed on page 185 in our textbook. So if I go through this and it's not entirely clear, please consult that, and that will explain it to you. You can study that. A fallacy is an argument that's invalid. A valid argument is one in which the premises, if the premises are true, the conclusion must necessarily follow. And this is the basic structure of an argument. You have your premises, statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, conclusion. If the premises are true in an argument and the conclusion must follow, that's a valid argument.